Hi, good evening. This is May, and we are coming to you live from Selfstrology Academy. So my name is May Sim, and I'm the Chief Astrologer of Selfstrology Academy. So we do these Facebook Lives for about half an hour each time, once every month, and we change the topics every month. This time around, our topic is emotional health. So mind you, I'm not talking about like clinical depressions or anything like that. I'm really talking about the kind of emotional health that applies to people like you and me on a regular basis. How you deal with stress, how you deal with basically other kinds of emotions. So the way this works is that if you've got a question, all you have to do is put it on the chat box. So I will have a look at what the questions are there, and I'll answer them. Right, so this is basically how it works. We do that for about half an hour, and I'll take any kind of questions. Like if you want to ask about specific signs or specific behavior, what are the indicators that show, or why do people do things like that, and you can just put it on the chat box, and I'll get to it. Okay, so just feel free to ask. Now the only thing is that I might not be able to look at specific charts, So some of you are familiar with astrology, and you know how charts can be quite specific to like a birth date and a birth time. So I won't, but I'm not set up to be reading charts today. So I will be basically answering the general questions. Okay, so we're about 10 minutes from 7 o'clock. So I will start taking questions in 10 minutes time. So if you are seeing some of the questions, if you've got some questions, you can put it in the chat box. And we had a bit of a technical error just now, so if some of you tried to put your questions in the previous video, which we went on for like the last few minutes, you might have to put your questions in again, because I might not see your questions, okay? So I'm just gonna find the Facebook Live so that I can access the questions. Okay, let me play this. Okay, well, hi Ivan, thank you very much. Thank you, you have been very kind to me. So please feel free to put in your questions, right? So while we're waiting for people to come and join us, we are very happy because we're coming to the end of the year, and I hope that everybody's just looking forward to 2019. I know I am. We've got our courses set up, we've got lots of clients sort of lined up for us. Quite a lot of new programs coming up in Selfstrology Academy. In fact, I think, is it in 2 days' time? Yeah, we're celebrating our 4th anniversary. So I'm talking to Jeremy off camera, and he's my very trusty assistant. Many of you know him already. We're having our 4th anniversary party in 2 days' time. It's quite a journey.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a while, and it's been fun. I think we've learned a lot, and we've been very lucky also, because we're going to have a lot of our students joining us for our parties. And if you've never actually been to a party filled with astrologers, you ain't seen nothing, okay? So we play our traditional astrology games, things like, I can't name them. A lot of my students are watching, so I'm not going to name the games, but these are your traditional party games, but we've got them the astrology version. So and if some of you are logging in, and if you are a lonely astrologer, if you've basically been studying astrology on your own, do consider joining us, right? It really is very fun when you have a lot of people sharing our insights about astrology and looking at charts together. I can't recall any of these sessions that we've had together where we haven't been just laughing and having fun. Yeah. Alright, so let me just have a look and see if the questions are coming in. Okay, so those of you who are here can sort of say hi, maybe just let me know if you've got any sort of questions. I think Jeremy's going to put a couple on very shortly. So, and these are some of the questions that we have gathered from people who were not able to make it for the Facebook Live. So they've provided these questions to us ahead of time. And so he's just going to post them here. So just to get things started, but please don't be shy, okay? How is everybody's Christmas? Is everybody going for a party? Or actually, I was the last Facebook Live we were talking about career, and I think I shared in the last Facebook Live that lots of people are making career changes at this moment in time. Some of the transits they're kind of like this right now, which means in 2018 a lot of people are ending things, and then in 2019 they're starting things. So in that sense, you're going to find a lot of people at this moment in time are having some kind of like career transition. Some people are switching companies. Literally, some of my clients are moving to different countries, different companies. It's a very exploratory time because Jupiter is moving into Sagittarius for the year 2019, and you'll see that a lot of people are looking to learn, to explore. So if you're one of them, congratulations to you. I mean, you are really looking forward to more growth in your career. Perhaps some of you will experience it through relationships and so on and so forth. So it's a very interesting time. Okay, so I see that Jeremy has posted one question already, so that's something that I'm going to start with in about a minute's time. And I see my friend Aaron's here. Hi Aaron. So this is our Facebook Live, those of you who have just joined us. So if you've got questions about emotional health as to what can astrology say about people at work or how they deal with your emotions, then do post your questions in the chat box and I will get to you. Okay. Yeah, okay. Hi Gordon. Yeah, good to see you. It's always fun to have our students here. So Gordon, feel free to put your questions here as well, okay? So let's see. Actually, you know, I was so apprehensive about doing a topic like that because I wasn't sure if people would want to talk about emotional health. This is Christmas, after all. You know, it is the festive season. It's a time where everybody's sort of celebrating the end of the year. And when someone suggested this topic to me, I was thinking to myself, like, is this the right time to talk about emotional health? Because it sounds like a pretty depressive topic. But it seems like we had a lot of very good response. In a sense, lots of people had questions to ask us, so we thought, why not, right? So as I said, any questions, so do join us. Put it in the chat box, okay? So it's 7 o'clock, so I will begin with the first question. Okay, so this is those that are posted by Selfstrology are coming from Jeremy. The questions that we have gathered from people who have sent us the questions beforehand. And the very first one I see here is, which signs are more prone to depression? And as most of you know, most people will know what sign they are, whether you're an Aquarius or if you happen to be a Libra or Scorpio. So if you ask me which signs are more prone to depression, I would say actually it's pretty much equal among the 12. And of course, some of you might be going, that can't be right, you know, surely some signs are more prone to depression. I would say depression comes in many, many forms. And I usually tell my students, because there are 4 elements in astrology, I would divide them out. So let me start with the earth signs. So those are Taurus, Capricorn, and Virgo. And you'll find actually these signs, by and large, are less associated with what we think of as depression, because depression usually is experienced like some kind of like an emotional thing, and you'll find the earth signs tend to be too practical to get depressed. And of course, you know, before I go through the 4 signs, I want to caveat this by saying that for each person, you are a lot more than just one sign. Right, so most of you logging in you are either my friend or my colleague or my student, my friends. You would know that when I look at the birth chart, I need a birth date, a birth time, and a birth city. And usually the chart that comes out is a complex one that has multiple planets in multiple signs. So just because you are a Gemini, for example, doesn't mean that your entire chart is in Gemini. In fact, it won't be. So when I talk about the 4 elements, I am talking about in general, okay? So that it doesn't mean that you're a Gemini, then you are 100% an air sign. It's not the case, okay? So if you happen to be strongly Taurus, Virgo, or Capricorn, the kind of depression that tends to hit is what we call earth depression, where the concern tends to be more about, am I good enough? Have I done my job well? Am I earning enough money? Am I valued enough? So you'll find that this kind of depression tends to hit when, for example, people don't get the promotion that they wanted, or they've lost their jobs, right? Or if for a protracted period of time they're not able to earn a certain amount of money. And usually this kind of depression is linked to self-worth, right? So if they start to feel kind of lousy, so it's that kind of depression. You'll find that air depression, because air people are pretty much the Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. You'll find that air signs are very concerned with concept thinking. So this kind of depression is the kind that I describe as like circular thinking. So they're trying to figure something out, and they haven't quite got their answer. So they tend to just go around in circles thinking about, is it A or is it B? So that depression comes because it spirals downwards, right? And if you speak Mandarin, we call this 想太多, you just got too much on your mind, and you're not sorting it out properly. Of course, water signs are the ones that are most commonly associated with emotions, and that's why most people would have the misconception that water signs are most prone to depression, and the water signs are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. So you'll find the water signs are usually more reserved, much more emotional, and very, very sensitive to their environment. So you start to find this type of depression comes in the form of like gushing emotions. So while they may look very calm on the outside, it doesn't always show on their face, but you'll find that emotionally, it's the emotions can be very wrung like this, right? So with this kind of depression, sometimes it's that feeling. It's usually triggered by, say, not getting enough attention, not having their emotions be understood. I think what triggers the water signs off is not being understood. And I've left the last one to the end. And I've told my students that this is usually a shock to most people. But the fire signs, which are Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, these signs are usually associated with like enthusiasm, optimism, excitement, and you would normally never associate these three signs with the concept of like a depression. But what I do tell my students is that fire signs, it's true that they seldom get depressed, but when they do, watch out. Because what happens is that they're used to having this high in life, like this looking forward, this vision, and usually the fire signs tend to get more affected by depression when they suddenly get this crash, this low. This is like not a religious discussion, but usually you find the fire signs get depressed with faith, with a lack of faith. They don't have the optimism to look forward anymore. So that's a very brief description of the 12 signs and how prone they are to depression. My official answer is that all 12 signs are not prone to, but that it's possible to have depression, but you'll find it comes in different forms. Okay, and okay, let me see what else I'm seeing here. Okay, give me a second to sort of scroll down. Okay, I've got another question posted by Jeremy here, and he says, how can you tell if a person is more suited to handle other people's concern with emotional distress? In general, in a chart, if I see that moon is strong in a person's chart, it adds on to somebody's capacity for emotional sensitivity. So it doesn't always matter what sign the moon is in. So not to worry if you happen to have the moon in Capricorn or Aquarius, which are usually the emotionless or the detached sign. You'll find that they still are more capable with dealing with people's concerns, although you'll find, depending on what sign you are more inclined towards, it tells me your style in handling other people's emotional distress. The other thing that I like to pay attention to is a body in the chart called Chiron. So those of you who are my students, you will know where Chiron is. So the meaning of Chiron in the chart, it has a nickname. It's called the wounded healer. So you'll find that where I find Chiron in your chart is where you may have experienced some kind of wounding in your life, and therefore you are able to help other people who've got similar issues. Chiron is sometimes associated with healing, but of course the honest truth is that there can be no healing until there is pain. So you'll find that where if your placement of Chiron in your chart corresponds to the type of people you want to help, and usually you'll find that sharing your own experience is a great way of helping other people to sort of understand what they're going through. So how to tell if a person's more suited? You'll find people with Chiron in the first house. If you've got Chiron in the 8th house, quite often if Chiron is in the 10th, and you'll find their careers have to be involved with healing people's problems in some ways or another. Of course, we're not always talking about emotional problems, so Chiron's quite useful to look at, right? And also to see how you yourself would deal with emotional issues, and that gives me some sense as to how you deal with other people's emotional issues. Okay, so let's have another question. Oh, Evangeline, hi, good to see you. Thank you so much. Okay, so okay, here's another question. And can astrology tell a person's psychological or emotional state? To a large extent, the answer is yes. Most of the time, what we look at is your birth chart. So then, what it tells me is, in general, how would you deal with a situation? Sometimes the chart gives us some clues as to who might be better equipped to deal with stress and distress. Let me give you an example. Let's just say if a family member passes away, and you know how within the family, you would know who is that one person who will remain calm and deal with the issues, like, you know, who's going to book the undertaker, who is organizing the family, who's sending out the notifications and that kind of thing. So there is always that one person that tends to keep their calm in a crisis situation. And then there are some people who become non-functional, you know, when emotional issues happen. So an astrology chart will be able to tell which one you are more likely to be. And also the chart gives me clues as to what are some of the incidences that is more likely to affect you. Some people are okay if they lose their jobs, but you know, if their girlfriend leaves, they fall to pieces, and vice versa. So it's the kind of triggers that trigger emotional distress is not quite the same for every single person. And the other thing that I like to look at is transits. So you have your birth chart, but you see the planets in the sky are still moving as we speak. So you'll find that even if somebody is prone to sort of like, you know, emotional highs and lows, but they're not like that every day. So usually what I do is I put your chart and I put the transits around it so that we are able to tell in advance which periods of time you are much more likely to be prone to like some emotional distress, because then the triggers get triggered. Right? So then we will be able to know which periods are like more emotionally difficult, and then we can discuss in advance how you might want to handle something like that. So it's quite common for me to have certain cases in my consultation room. Sometimes people know that they're going to do something distressing, like for example break up with someone that they've been in a relationship with for a number of years. So they already know in advance that they're not going to be in a stable emotional state, and you find that astrology gives some suggestions as to how you might be able to handle that. Some people find that writing their emotions down helps them to manage. Some people need friends to talk with, and some people also prefer to see a professional. And whichever way works best for you, you'll find the important thing is that you maintain your objectives, you know, get what you need done while keeping your emotions handled. Okay. So Gordon asks, how does the emotion from each sign in effect prone to health illness for people? Well, I think I've covered that. So Gordon, I hope you got your answers for when I covered like the 4 elements of depression. And how can astrology be used to help people dealing with emotional roller coasters? I would say the first is to understand where the triggers are. So for example, some people get emotionally triggered if they feel that they've been bullied or that they have been victimized in a situation. And you'll find that it's not just 1 or 2 situations in their life where they felt like a victim. So when they were at school, they thought they were a victim. When they're at work, they thought they were a victim. In a relationship, this might come out. And you'll find that usually these patterns are repeated and in multiple areas of your life. So what happens is, in a consultation, what I usually do is to help my client figure out where that trigger is. And you'll be surprised. Sometimes the trigger is like a specific action or a specific word or something that people say or make reference to, and then they just go like, okay, you know, you just crumble. So if you find that the patterns tend to repeat themselves, then we call this a psychological astrology placement, or what my students call PA. So when we examine where the PAs are, we'll see patterns in how your emotions tend to play themselves out. So first of all, we recognize the pattern, see where it comes from. And most of my clients, it's like an aha moment. Oh yeah, every time this happens, I get emotional like that. Okay, so once we've verified that the pattern is like that, and then now that we're in consultation and everybody is like all stable and, you know, not emotionally in distress, and then we find a way what kind of actions or handling mechanisms you can add into your life such that you can handle the situation when it shows up. So actually this afternoon I just saw a client this afternoon, and we were outlining some of the emotional patterns. And in fact, one of the things I suggested to her was that if you're feeling down about yourself, you could actually go and volunteer your time to charity. And because her self-worth is in the ability to have knowledge, to be able to contribute knowledge to others, then I said, well, why not give tuition to kids who can't afford it? And she agreed with me, and she said, yeah, it was always on her mind that she thought she might want to give free tuition to poor families. Why not? Right? You know, if it means that you make a contribution to society and it helps you deal with whatever emotions that you're feeling with at the time, I say do it. Right? So you'll find that the remedies have nothing to do with buying crystals or using oils or anything like that. It's really just spotting the patterns that you've got in your life and then dealing with what comes along. Okay, so let me just grab another question. Okay, Rain has a question. He's asking, Chiron in the 1st, 8th and 10th are good healers to others' emotions. Short answer is yes. People with Chiron in the 1st, if you have Chiron in the 1st house, you might have experienced firsthand some kind of wounding to self. Some of my students think that this kind of wounding is to the physical body, and sometimes it is, but oftentimes it is not. You'll find the 1st house is also how you express yourself to the world, how you present yourself. And sometimes Chiron in the 1st can be, in a sense, you know, like a low self-worth, or perhaps a way in which you feel that you're shy or you feel reserved to put yourself out there in the world. And you'll find Chiron in the 1st are very good with healing for confidence issues, for assertiveness issues. In fact, I remember when I was doing my degree in astrology, one of my classmates had Chiron in the 1st, and she is a masseuse. So she's not the kind of masseuse where it's all about like, oh, muscle stress. In fact, the kind of massage she does, it's specifically for emotional distress. So if you're dealing with stress, if you're dealing with pressure, the type of massage she does is to relieve that kind of negative emotion. So yeah, Chiron in the 1st house can be what I call the physical healer. Chiron in the 8th, I would say Chiron in the 8th is quite specific to psychological healing. So those are strongest, I think, when there is a trauma involved or where there are psychological patterns involved. Perhaps I flatter myself here, but I also have Chiron in the 8th house. And in that sense, I think this is one of the reasons why I am drawn to psychological astrology. It's the type of healing where you have to deal with a trauma or distress before the healing can happen. And as I mentioned, those in the 10th house need to have professions in which they feel that they are solving problems for other people. Right? So these are pretty strong. Okay, so Dave has a question, and he's asked, so preempting that you are going to have depression in a period that's coming in a few months' time, will we be able to avoid being depressed? See, the concept of avoid, so those of you who speak Mandarin who are watching these videos, it's in Mandarin we call it pi, which is translated as avoid. In Western astrology, we don't quite have this concept of avoiding depression, because let's be very realistic here, people don't get depression just like that. You know, if you're going to get depressed about something or you're going to get upset about something, that means there is an area of your life that isn't working. So it can be money problems making you depressed. It can be your kids don't talk to you and you're depressed, or there's no communication in your relationship and then you're depressed. So you find that if I'm looking at a chart and if I say, oh, it looks like you're going to get into a depressive period between, say, March and April, let's just say, what we want, you find that avoiding depression doesn't remove the problem, right? So there is a problem that causes the depression, and most people are like, oh, I don't want to be depressed. Can I avoid the depression? So most people are focused on that. But you find that, okay, let's just say, well, I mean, they're looking for a quick fix solution. It's like, can I go on a holiday? Or what if I bought myself a lot of ice cream? Will that take the depression away? It might. I mean, if ice cream can remove that feeling of depression, that works. And then you can just basically go do that. However, you realize that the core issue is still there. So if you're upset about how, oh, I think my partner doesn't listen to me, or my emotional needs are not being met in this relationship, and if you find the only way to deal with the depression or any kind of negative emotions in a productive way that is going to solve your problems in the long run is to solve the relationship issue, right? Because once this is solved, you find all the negative emotions disappear. In a sense, I tend to think of negative emotions as being the symptom of a disease, right? So if this is your life and something doesn't work, right? You've got something like a breakdown in this area of your life, and you find that the negative emotions are just the symptoms. It's the cough, it's the fever, and if you're just taking medicine just to take the fever away, it doesn't cure the cancer. You see, so what I would say is that's why in psychological astrology we look at the root cause of the depression, and we don't deal with the depression, so we don't avoid the depression. We look at the problem in the face and say, this is the problem and this is the solution, right? So this is, but then again, you see, I'm into psychological healing. So my style is, we're going to look directly at what the issue is, okay? So Dave says, what if I was just constantly thinking about other things? Would that work? Well, in that sense, if the depression is here, you're just going around it. You're like, oh, this thing is depressing. I don't want to think about it. So instead of thinking about my job, for example, let's think about my holiday in Japan. Or let's think about, oh, this new girl I've just met. But you see, doing this doesn't make the problem of your career go away. So B won't work. Okay. So, okay, now Jeremy's posted another one. And he's asking, is there an astrological reason why sometimes we are unable to control our anger or anxiety? The short answer is, if your question is there an astrological explanation for why it is, then the answer is yes. You'll find that there are some astrological placements that will indicate if you've got like this uncontrollable hair trigger temper, or some people just get into this anxiety. You know how some people get like cold hands, or if they feel like they go to an exam or an interview and you find that the anxiety starts rising, then this is the chart will explain why. And because this is what I practice is psychological astrology, there's usually a prior incident. For example, some kind of experience that you had in the past that makes you really, really scared of exams, for example. So usually what we do is we trace the patterns and we try to find out what was that very first exam that got you so anxious, so that we are able to deal with it now that you're an adult and you have a lot of options at your disposal. So that's one way of dealing, of astrology helping you to figure out why we get the way we do. Okay, and Ziwun, has got a question here. Will aspects to Mercury cause nervous disorders? The short answer is yes. Right. So Mercury is, in Greek mythology, he is the messenger. He passes messages between the gods. So in that sense, in our psyche, it's we tend to think of Mercury as being like the thinking or the communicating sign, but you'll find. But the nerves are like that too. It's like that's the system in our body that sort of like passes messages between all the organs and all that stuff. So the short answer is yes. Having said that, I think you don't want to get too too anxious about that and start, desperately looking at your chart to see if there are nervous disorders. Not every position gives you a nervous disorder, although I will say that in fact, it's not just Mercury. You'll find that some of the moon signs can also give you nervous disorders. There is another planet that I tend to look at when we look at nerves or anxiety, and instead of Mercury, I would focus on the planet Uranus instead. Because Uranus, when I teach astrology and many of my students are logging in here, you see Uranus is like that. It's that static energy, and this is anxiety at the same time. So Mercury is like this, but Uranus is like that. Okay, so you'll find when Uranus is strong in a person's chart, you'll find that anxiety and nervous disorders can be higher. But I'm going to caveat that by saying that I do have to look at an actual chart with a birth date, a birth time, and a birth city before we can say for sure if somebody is the nervous type. And the other caveat I want to say is myself and most of my students do not have psychological credentials. What we practice is a form of profiling that is able to identify behaviors. So basically, you'll find that sometimes our definitions of nerves or anxiety may not be the same as what is being bandied about in the psychological circles. It's not always the same thing, okay? Okay. Well, welcome. And Linda, good to see you again. Okay, and Jeremy's got another question. It says here, if the moon is heavily aspected in a chart, does it make a person more emotionally needy? The short answer is also yes. What really happens here is if the moon has a lot of aspects, it means that the moon, which is emotions and the need for security, exerts its influence on many more areas of a person's psyche. So you'll find that while some people may only be emotional about relationships, for example, but if the moon has got like multiple aspects, so for those of you who have seen a birth chart before, aspects are pretty much the lines that go right in the middle of the chart. So if a moon has a lot of lines, it means it has its influence on the Pluto, on Neptune, on Mercury, or so on and so forth. And usually all these aspect lines will be connecting all over the chart. So that's one moon with a very strong influence. So I would say yes, it is also emotionally needy. But I also want to turn it another way around, is that the moon is not just emotional needs, it is also the ability to provide emotional support to other people. So you also find that people with very strong moons can also be, well, they can be motherly, they can be nurturing, and very, very supportive to people in their lives, in different areas of their lives. So you'll find that in times of distress, you sometimes want these people around. You will find that they will instinctively know how other people need support. Is that person who will come to you with cupcakes or like a bowl of soup when you need it. So it is true that they might be more prone to sort of emotional changes in their lives, but by and large, I would not say that it's a bad thing, right? So the key to psychological astrology really is figuring out how you would use your chart in a most constructive way, so that and while minimizing the effects, the negative effects of like losing control over your own chart. Yeah, no problem. It's like, okay, so I think Jeremy's just posted a link to where you can generate your birth chart. So some of you are logging in, and if you have not seen your birth chart before, you can use that link. You find that it goes to our website where there is a free chart generator. This happens in 2 steps. So step 1, you put in your email address, and in the second step, you key in your birth date, your birth time, and your birth city. So the caveat I'll say here is that you do need to have an exact birth time. So what this means is that if your birth time is 3:17 p.m., you want to put 3:17 p.m. and not 3 p.m., right? So 3 p.m. is somebody else's birth time. So if you put that in, you will be able to get a very simple description of your birth chart, as well as the planetary placements in your chart, right? So of course, if you do want to have more detailed analysis, then you will need to contact an astrologer in your where you are to get a more detailed look at your chart. So we have about another 3 more minutes before we end off, and I also want to take the opportunity to let everybody know we've got an event that is happening next Thursday this time, so it's about 7 p.m. So it will be here at our school at 15 Bussorah Street, and the topic is the Astrological Outlook for the year 2019. So this is an event that I do every single year. Usually the very last event of the year is the Astrological Outlook. Some of the topics that I will be covering is I will put Singapore's birth chart. So it's not just humans who have birth charts, you'll find that even the country has a birth chart. So I'll do the transits for Singapore. It's been fun and very nerve-wracking for me usually to do that, because if I make predictions, let's just say everybody's going to know if I'm right or wrong. So it's usually for fun, and I always caveat that by saying that, okay, this is just for fun, okay? I don't want anybody making investments, just because the astrologer says it's going to be the case. It helps that I've been quite on the spot in the past, but this one is just for fun, okay? So I will look at that, and we also look at some of the patterns that we expect to see in 2019, and who among us in the audience might expect to have a little bit more activity in our lives. And if time permits, I might also pick 2 or 3 people from the audience that we can just sort of have a sneak peek at what 2019 is going to bring to you. So please do join us. And if you decide that you would like to join us for this free event, what you do is you send us an email to hello@selfstrology.com to reserve your seat, right? So, but Jeremy, do we still have spaces left? Or we can still take some people. Okay, so that's good. Okay, so just send us your RSVP to hello@selfstrology.com, and then we will see you at the Thursday event. Okay, so oh wow, that's cute. My father has just joined us on the chat. So hi, Daddy. And for those of you who don't know, the Henry Sim who's just joined the chat is the father of both myself and Jeremy. So some of you do not know that Jeremy and I are brother and sister. So, and I also see that Jeremy has posted the link for the event that we're doing on Thursday. So just feel free to click on that so that you can see the details of what we will be covering. And it's so cute because a lot of my students do know my father as well. Okay, so well, it's 7:30 and it's been really, really fun. I want to give a great thank you to the people who have posted questions for me to answer. And I'll be very honest, it's very nerve-wracking for me to do Facebook Live. My biggest fear is that nobody's going to post questions, and I'm so scared that I'm going to be awkwardly sort of talking to myself online. But I'm so glad that you've all found this useful, and keep your eyes peeled for our next Facebook Live next month. I haven't decided on my topic yet, so if there is a topic that you think you would like me to cover, just send us anything. Message us on Facebook, send us an email at hello@selfstrology, and I'll do what I can. So tell me what you're most interested in, and we can make the Facebook Live a topic of your desire, okay? So I want to thank everybody for joining us for half an hour, and if you can make it, I'll see you next Thursday, okay? Thank you very much, guys.